I remember the exact moment I first noticed something was amiss. It had been a long Thursday at work, the kind of day where everything takes twice as long as it should. I pulled into my driveway, grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat, and walked toward my front door. Something felt different. The sensation was immediate but difficult to place, like walking into your living room and finding the furniture slightly rearranged. I paused at the walkway, my keys dangling in my hand. My eyes scanned the exterior of my home, searching for what had triggered this unease. The lawn was freshly mowed. The flower beds were tidy. The paint was unchanged. And yet something was not right. That is when I saw it. The house number plaque beside my door had been completely replaced. Where once hung the brass numbers I had carefully selected when we first purchased the home, now sat a sterile, black metal sign with white numerals. Not only was the design entirely different, but the placement had shifted 3 inches to the right. And then I noticed something that made me take a step closer. The number itself was not quite right. Our address had always been 4829 Willow Creek Lane, but this new plaque read 4830. I blinked several times, wondering if my exhaustion was causing me to see things incorrectly. But no, the number was definitely different. I unlocked the door and immediately pulled out my phone to call my wife, Elaine. "Did you approve someone changing our house number?" I asked without preamble. "What are you talking about, Robert?" she replied, confusion evident in her voice. "Our house number plaque. It has been completely replaced with a different design. And not just the design, the number itself is different. It now says 4830 instead of 4829. "I have no idea what you are talking about," she said. "Nobody asked me about changing anything. Are you sure?" "I am looking right at it," I confirmed. "Someone changed it without telling us." After hanging up, I checked my email inbox, specifically the folder where I keep all HOA communications. There was nothing about number replacements or standardization. I checked our physical mailbox as well. No notices, no forms requesting permission, nothing. I walked next door to speak with the Peters family. Jim was watering his immaculate roses when I approached. "Jim, did you notice they changed your house number?" I asked. He turned, frowning slightly. "Yes, happened sometime yesterday while I was at work. Came home and there it was. Different style, different spot." "Did anyone notify you beforehand? Ask permission?" "Not a word," he confirmed. "Figured it was another one of those HOA decisions they make without bothering to consult us. Did you check with anyone else?" I spent the next 30 minutes walking around the block. Every single home had the new, standardized number plaques. Some neighbors had not even noticed the change yet. Others, like Mrs. Abernathy across the street, had noticed but assumed it was standard maintenance. When I returned home, I immediately called the HOA office. After being placed on hold for nearly 10 minutes, I finally reached someone. "Good afternoon, Willow Creek Estates HOA. This is Denise speaking." "Hello, Denise. This is Robert Matthews at 4829, or apparently now 4830 Willow Creek Lane. Someone has replaced my house number without my knowledge or consent. Can you explain why?" "Oh, that," she replied, her tone dismissive. "That is part of our community standardization project. All homes received new number plaques this week." "But no one informed me this was happening," I pressed. "And more importantly, my actual house number has been changed. That seems like something that requires notification and consent." "It is not a big deal, Mr. Matthews," she said, her voice taking on that particular customer service tone that suggested I was being unreasonable. "The board approved the changes last month. The numbers were adjusted for better sequencing along the street." "Better sequencing. You cannot just change someone's address without telling them." "I assure you, it has all been properly registered with municipal services. Was there anything else I can help you with today?" I hung up the phone feeling a growing sense of unease. This was more than an aesthetic choice. This was our address, our identity within the community, a fundamental way people and services located our home. And they had changed it as casually as if they were deciding on a new color for the community mailboxes. That night, as I explained the situation to Elaine, I could not shake the feeling that this seemingly small change might have consequences none of us had considered. Little did I know just how right that instinct would prove to be. The first sign of trouble arrived 3 days after the number change. I was working from home when the doorbell rang. A delivery driver stood on my porch, looking confused. "I have a package for 4829 Willow Creek Lane," he said, checking his device. "But this says 4830. "It should be here," I explained. "They recently changed the numbers without telling anyone." He frowned. "Well, according to my system, 4829 is 2 houses down now." After a brief discussion, he reluctantly left the package with me, but his confusion mirrored my growing frustration. Later that same day, my neighbor from 2 doors down appeared at my doorstep, holding a small package. "I think this belongs to you," she said. "It has your name but my new house number. What is going on?" I explained the situation as best I could, thanked her for bringing over the package, and added this incident to my mental list of inconveniences caused by the HOA's unilateral decision. The following week, things escalated. Elaine had ordered a prescription delivery service for my sister Rachel, who was staying with us while recovering from a minor surgery. The delivery driver called my cell phone, clearly frustrated. "Sir, I have been driving around your neighborhood for 15 minutes. I cannot find 4829 Willow Creek Lane. The numbers jump from 4827 to 4830. "We are 4830 now," I explained with a sigh. "They changed all the numbers recently." "Well, that is not what is in our system, and it is not what is on the prescription label either." It took another 20 minutes of directing him before the crucial medication arrived at our doorstep. Rachel, who was already uncomfortable from her recovery, had to wait longer than necessary for pain relief. "This is getting ridiculous," Elaine said that evening. "What if it had been an emergency?" Her words would prove prophetic just days later when our dinner delivery order never arrived. After 45 minutes of waiting, I called the restaurant. "The driver says he delivered it to 4829 Willow Creek Lane," the manager insisted. "That address no longer exists as such," I explained, trying to keep my temper in check. "The HOA renamed us 4830 without notice." "Well, our driver confirmed delivery. Someone signed for it." After another frustrating phone call, we discovered that someone at what was now designated as 4829, formerly 4827, had accepted our food without question and apparently decided to keep it. The culmination of these incidents led me to attend the monthly HOA meeting the following evening. The meeting was held in the community center, a space typically used for neighborhood gatherings and holiday parties. Tonight, it hosted about 30 residents seated in rows of uncomfortable folding chairs, facing a long table where the board members sat like judges presiding over a court. When the floor opened for resident comments, I stood and addressed the room. "I would like to discuss the recent house number changes," I began. "My family has experienced numerous delivery issues, including a medical prescription that was delayed because the driver could not locate our home." Before I could continue, Ms. Colburn, the HOA president, interrupted me. She was a small woman with meticulously coiffed silver hair and reading glasses that hung from a beaded chain around her neck. Despite her diminutive stature, she commanded the room with practiced authority. "Mr. Matthews, is it? The number standardization project was approved after thorough consideration. The new system improves visibility and creates a more logical sequence for emergency services." "But no one was notified," I argued. "And changing actual addresses rather than just the placards creates confusion for delivery services, mail, and potentially emergency responders." A few heads nodded in agreement, but Ms. Colburn waved her hand dismissively. "The proper authorities have been updated with the changes. Your concerns, while noted, seem to be an overreaction to a minor transition period." Several board members exchanged glances, smirking slightly. I felt my face grow warm. A minor transition. My sister's medication was delayed because of this change. That sounds like an issue with the delivery service, not our addressing system, Ms. Colburn countered. The new numbers are clearly more visible from the street. They are larger, reflective, and consistently placed on each home. This change improves safety for everyone. I looked around the room, hopping for support, but most residents averted their eyes. A few nodded in apparent agreement with Ms. Colburn. I realized I was being portrayed as the difficult one, the homeowner making a mountain out of a molehill. After the meeting, I approached Ms. Colburn directly, requesting written clarification about the changes and confirmation that all emergency services had been properly notified. "Everything has been handled appropriately," she said, barely glancing up from gathering her papers. "If you continue having issues, perhaps you should consider updating your personal records more promptly." In the days that followed, I sent emails requesting documentation of the board's decision and the process for notifying municipal services. Each message was either ignored or met with brief, unhelpful responses. I began documenting every incident, taking photographs of misdelivered packages, saving emails from confused service providers, recording dates and times of each occurrence. What started as annoyance had transformed into a methodical documentation of a problem that no one in authority seemed willing to acknowledge. Elaine noticed my growing obsession with the issue. "Do you think this is worth all this energy?" she asked one evening as I added notes to my growing file. "It is not just about convenience," I explained. "What happens if there is a real emergency? What if seconds count and someone cannot find our house?" Neither of us knew how soon that hypothetical question would become a terrifying reality. The night that changed everything began like any other. Elaine was working late at the hospital, leaving Rachel and me to fend for ourselves for dinner. My sister had been staying with us for 3 weeks following her gallbladder surgery, gradually regaining her strength. Her recovery had been steady but slower than expected, requiring extended leave from her teaching position. We had just finished a simple dinner of pasta when Rachel mentioned feeling unusually tired. I encouraged her to rest while I cleaned up the kitchen. 20 minutes later, I heard a crash from the guest bedroom. I rushed down the hallway to find Rachel on the floor beside the bed, clutching her chest. Her face had taken on an alarming gray pallor, and her breathing came in short, desperate gasps. "Cannot breathe," she managed to whisper, her eyes wide with fear. "Pressure, chest." My training from a CPR course years ago kicked in. I helped her into a semi-reclined position against the bed, loosened her clothing, and immediately reached for my phone to dial 911. My hands trembled as I hit the numbers. 911, what is your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was calm and clear. "My sister is having trouble breathing," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "Possible cardiac event. She is conscious but struggling to breathe and complaining of chest pressure." "What is your address?" 4830 Willow Creek Lane, I replied, then hesitated. "Actually, it used to be 4829. The HOA recently changed all the house numbers. It might still be listed as 4829 in your system." I gave the cross streets and additional details about our location as the dispatcher assured me help was on the way. The minutes that followed stretched like hours. I kept checking Rachel's pulse, which was rapid and irregular. Her breathing remained labored, and beads of sweat formed on her forehead despite her skin feeling cool to the touch. "They should be here by now," I muttered, checking my watch. 8 minutes had passed since the call. I stepped outside, expecting to see flashing lights approaching our street. Nothing. The neighborhood was quiet, the only sound coming from distant traffic on the main road. At the 12-minute mark, I called 911 again. "I called about a medical emergency at 4830 Willow Creek Lane," I explained, unable to keep the panic from my voice. "No one has arrived yet." "One moment, sir," the dispatcher said. After a brief pause, she returned. "The unit reports they are in your neighborhood but are having trouble locating your address. Can you confirm the number again?" "It is 4830 now, but it was recently changed from 4829. The whole neighborhood had their numbers reorganized." Sir, our system shows 4829 at a different location on your street. No, that is the problem, I nearly shouted. The HOA changed everything without proper notification. Please stay calm, sir. Is there any way you can flag down the ambulance? They are in the area. I rushed back to check on Rachel, whose condition had worsened. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, and her eyes were half closed. Hang on, I told her, squeezing her hand. I need to get their attention. Help is close. I ran outside and saw the ambulance moving slowly at the far end of our long, winding street, clearly searching for an address that no longer existed as marked. Without hesitation, I sprinted down the middle of the road, waving my arms above my head like a man possessed. Here, I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet neighborhood. Over here. Several neighbors had come outside, drawn by the commotion. I continued waving and pointing toward my house until finally, mercifully, the ambulance turned and accelerated in my direction. She is inside, I gasped as the paramedics jumped out. Difficulty breathing, chest pain, possible cardiac event. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency once inside. They assessed Rachel quickly, administered oxygen, and connected her to portable monitors that beeped with alarming urgency. BP is 90/60 and dropping, one paramedic said to the other. O2 sat at 82%. We need to move now. As they transferred Rachel to the stretcher, the lead paramedic turned to me. What took you so long to call? I did not, I said, my voice hollow. I called immediately. You could not find us because the HOA changed all our house numbers recently. He frowned, but said nothing more as they wheeled my sister out to the waiting ambulance. I followed in my car, trembling with a mixture of fear for Rachel and rage toward the HOA that had created this dangerous situation. The emergency room was a blur of activity. Doctors used terms like pulmonary embolism and critical window as they rushed Rachel into treatment. I sat alone in the waiting area, calling Elaine, who was fortunately already at the same hospital for her shift and could join me immediately. The doctors said timing is everything with these blood clots, Elaine explained, her medical training allowing her to understand the situation more clearly than I could. If treatment is delayed even 15 or 20 minutes, the outcomes can be dramatically worse. Those words burned into my consciousness. 15 minutes. That was approximately how long the ambulance had circled our neighborhood, looking for a house number that no longer matched official records. After 3 hours of anxious waiting, the doctor finally emerged to speak with us. She is stabilized, he assured us. The clot-busting medication appears to be working. We will keep her in the ICU overnight for observation, but I am cautiously optimistic. And if the ambulance had been delayed longer? I asked, already knowing the answer. The doctor's expression was grave. In cases like these, every minute counts. Much longer and we might be having a very different conversation. As relief for Rachel's condition washed over me, it was immediately replaced by cold, clear anger. The HOA's thoughtless actions had nearly cost my sister her life. Ms. Colburn's dismissive attitude toward my concerns echoed in my mind. It is not a big deal, Mr. Matthews. But it was a big deal. It was literally life and death, and someone needed to be held accountable. The morning after Rachel's emergency, I left the hospital once she was stable and drove directly to the HOA office. I had not slept. My eyes were red-rimmed, my clothes rumpled, but my mind was crystal clear. This was no longer about inconvenience or principle. This was about accountability for actions that had nearly resulted in tragedy. The HOA office was housed in a small building near the community pool. As I pushed through the glass door, the receptionist looked up with the practiced smile of someone prepared to handle routine complaints about lawn height or fence colors. Her smile faltered when she saw my expression. I need to speak with Ms. Colburn immediately, I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. Do you have an appointment? Ms. Colburn is very busy today with. Tell her Robert Matthews is here regarding an emergency situation caused by the house number changes. I will wait. Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation because the receptionist picked up her phone without further objection. After a brief, hushed conversation, she directed me to a door at the end of the hallway. Ms. Colburn's office was meticulously organized, with community awards displayed prominently on the walls. She sat behind a large desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed some document. She did not stand when I entered. "Mr. Matthews," she said, her tone suggesting mild inconvenience rather than concern. "I understand you have some urgent matter to discuss." "Last night," I began, remaining standing, "my sister suffered a pulmonary embolism. I called 911 immediately. The ambulance could not find our house because of the number changes your board implemented without proper notification." Ms. Colburn removed her glasses, folding them carefully before responding. "I am sorry to hear about your sister, Mr. Matthews. I hope she is recovering well." "She nearly died," I stated flatly. "The paramedics circled our neighborhood for 15 minutes looking for an address that no longer matched emergency service records." "That sounds like an issue with the emergency response system, not our addressing update," she replied, her tone unchanged. "We filed all the appropriate paperwork with the municipal offices." I placed my hands on her desk, leaning forward. "You changed our house numbers without consent, without notification, and without ensuring that all services, especially emergency services, had properly updated their records." She sighed, the sound dripping with condescension. "Mr. Matthews, as I explained at the meeting, the number standardization project improves visibility and creates a more logical sequence. Had you promptly updated your personal records with medical providers and emergency contacts, perhaps." "Do not dare suggest this is my fault," I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. "You made a unilateral decision that affected every home in this community, a decision that put lives at risk." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photographs I had taken. The ambulance at the wrong end of the street, the paramedics rushing into our home, the hospital monitors connected to my sister. "This is the real consequence of your standardization project," I said. "Not improved visibility, confusion that nearly cost my sister her life." Ms. Colburn barely glanced at the images. "I understand you are upset, Mr. Matthews, but I must remind you that the board voted on this matter months ago. It was included in the meeting minutes." "Meeting minutes that were not circulated," I countered. "No emails, no letters, no notices on doors, nothing. They were posted on the community bulletin board as required by our bylaws." I laughed without humor. "The bulletin board next to the pool that no one checks. That is your idea of adequate notification for changing something as critical as our addresses." Ms. Colburn straightened the papers on her desk, a gesture that seemed designed to signal the conversation was nearing its end. "The board followed all proper procedures. If you have concerns about our process, you are welcome to submit them in writing for consideration at the next quarterly meeting." "This cannot wait 3 months," I insisted. "I want an emergency board meeting called to address this issue. The numbers need to be restored immediately." "That simply is not possible," she replied. "The project has been completed at considerable expense. Revering it would be financially irresponsible." "More irresponsible than risking lives." "You are being dramatic, Mr. Matthews. One isolated incident does not constitute a community crisis." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I am giving you and the board an opportunity to correct this situation internally, Ms. Colburn. If you refuse, I will have no choice but to make this a public matter." For the first time, something like concern flickered across her face, quickly replaced by defiance. "Are you threatening the HOA, Mr. Matthews?" "I am promising you that if this is not addressed immediately, I will ensure that every homeowner, every local news outlet, and every emergency service in this county knows exactly what happened last night and who is responsible." She stood then, her posture rigid. "I think this conversation has become unproductive. If you wish to file a formal complaint, forms are available from the receptionist." "You still do not understand the severity of this situation," I said, moving toward the door. But you will. As I left the office, my resolve hardened. Ms. Colburn had made her choice. Now I would make mine. This was no longer just about house numbers. It was about a system that prioritized aesthetic standardization over safety, protocol over people, and control over common sense. I pulled out my phone and began making calls. The fight had only just begun. That evening, I converted our dining room into a command center. Laptop open, files spread across the table, I began my systematic investigation. If the HOA had followed proper procedures as Ms. Colburn claimed, there would be documentation. If they had not, I would find the gaps. I started with the HOA's publicly available records. According to the bylaws, any major community changes required not only board approval, but also proper notification to all homeowners at least 30 days prior to implementation. The meeting minutes from the past 6 months mentioned a community beautification initiative, but contained no specific reference to changing house numbers or addresses. Next, I requested copies of all permits filed with the city. After an hour on the phone with various municipal departments, I learned that while the HOA had indeed submitted paperwork for the number changes, they had done so only 1 week before implementation, not the required 45 days that would allow for proper updating of emergency service databases. Elaine joined my effort when she returned from the hospital, where Rachel remained under observation. Her organizational skills proved invaluable as we created a timeline of events, highlighting each procedural violation. "Robert, look at this," she said, pointing to a clause in our HOA contract. "Any changes affecting property identification require a 2/3 majority vote from homeowners, not just the board." No such vote ever took place, I confirmed. They circumvented their own rules. Our investigation expanded beyond documents. I began speaking with neighbors, particularly the elderly residents who might have been disproportionately affected by the confusion. Mrs. Fitzgerald, an 84-year-old widow who lived 3 doors down, shared that her weekly nurse had missed an appointment because she could not locate the house. "I did not know who to complain to," she admitted. "The board is so intimidating these days." Mr. Guzman, a retired firefighter who lived on the corner, provided another crucial perspective. "In emergency response, we rely on accurate addressing. Changing numbers without proper notification to all services creates a dangerous situation. It is actually against county safety protocols." By the 3rd day of our investigation, we had compiled testimony from 12 neighbors, including 3 elderly residents who had experienced missed medical appointments due to the addressing confusion. More importantly, we had documented at least 7 procedural violations in how the HOA had implemented the changes. Elaine, who had been hesitant about my confrontational approach initially, now worked alongside me with equal determination. "They cannot just ignore this," she said as we organized our findings into a comprehensive report. "Too many people have been affected." With Rachel's permission, we recorded her account of the emergency, emphasizing the critical time lost as paramedics searched for our home. Her testimony was powerful, a first-hand account of the potentially fatal consequences of administrative negligence. "I remember wondering why help was not coming," she said, her voice still weak but resolute. "Those minutes felt like hours." With our documentation complete, we designed simple but effective flyers detailing what had happened and inviting neighbors to a community meeting independent of the HOA. Elaine created a private social media group where residents could share their own experiences with the number changes. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, over 60 homeowners had joined the group, many sharing stories of confusion, missed deliveries, and safety concerns. What had seemed like isolated incidents were revealed as a pattern affecting the entire community. Our final step was contacting local media. I reached out to a reporter at the county newspaper who specialized in community issues. After reviewing our documentation, she agreed that the story deserved attention. "This is about more than house numbers," she noted during our phone call. It is about transparency, proper procedure, and ultimately public safety. As our campaign gained momentum, I received an unexpected call from Richard Thornton, a board member who had always seemed to follow Ms. Colburn's lead without question. "Matthews," he said, his voice low as if concerned about being overheard. "The board was not fully informed about the implementation timeline. Some of us are concerned about how this was handled." That single call confirmed what I had suspected. Cracks were forming in Ms. Colburn's carefully constructed facade of authority. Our neighbors were no longer willing to remain silent. The truth was emerging, and with it, the possibility of meaningful change. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. HOA address changes lead to emergency response delay ran across the front page of the local section. The article detailed Rachel's emergency, the ambulance's difficulty locating our home, and the HOA's procedural violations in implementing the changes. It included quotes from Mr. Guzman about emergency response protocols and testimonials from elderly residents who had been affected. By noon, the regional television news had picked up the story. A reporter and camera crew arrived at our home, requesting an interview. Rachel, now discharged from the hospital but still recovering, agreed to speak on camera alongside me. "I believed help was coming," she told the reporter, her voice strengthened by purpose despite her physical weakness. "But because of an arbitrary decision made without proper communication, that help was delayed. Those minutes could have cost me my life." The reporter turned to me next. "What do you hope will come from bringing this story forward?" "Accountability," I answered without hesitation, "and immediate action to restore the original numbers before someone else experiences what my family did. This is not about aesthetics or standardization. It is about safety." The pressure mounted quickly. By that evening, the HOA announced an emergency town hall meeting to address what they termed community concerns regarding the address standardization project. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at the community center. When Thursday arrived, the community center was filled beyond capacity. Residents stood along the walls and spilled out into the hallway. At the front of the room, the HOA board members sat behind their usual table, but the atmosphere was markedly different from regular meetings. Gone was the casual authority, replaced by visible tension. Ms. Colburn called the meeting to order, her voice lacking its usual confident edge. "We have called this special session to address concerns regarding the recently completed address standardization project. While the board stands by the project's intentions to improve visibility and logical sequencing." "People could have died," someone called from the middle of the room, triggering a wave of murmurs. Ms. Colburn tapped her gavel. "Please maintain order. As I was saying, while we stand by the project's intentions, we recognize that some residents have experienced difficulties during the transition period." I raised my hand and was reluctantly acknowledged. "This was not a transition problem," I stated clearly, standing so the entire room could see me. "This was a procedural failure that violated the HOA's own bylaws. No homeowner vote was conducted as required for property identification changes. No proper notification period was observed. No verification of emergency service database updates was completed before implementation." Approving nods and murmurs swept through the crowd. "Furthermore," I continued, "the board failed to file the required permits with the county 45 days in advance, meaning emergency services had outdated information. When my sister needed emergency medical attention, the ambulance could not find our home because of these failures." Ms. Colburn's face had grown progressively more flushed. "Mr. Matthews, while your situation was unfortunate—" "Unfortunate?" Rachel interrupted from her seat near the front. Though still weak, she had insisted on attending. "I nearly died because of this board's negligence, and you call it unfortunate." The room erupted in angry voices. Several board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Richard Thornton, the board member who had called me earlier, visibly distanced himself from Ms. Colburn, sliding his chair several inches away. An elderly man I recognized as Judge Michaels, retired from the county court, stood slowly. The room quieted as he spoke. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current board leadership, he announced formally. And I further move that all original house numbers be restored within 14 days, with proper notification to all relevant authorities. I second the motion, called Mrs. Fitzgerald, the elderly widow I had interviewed. Ms. Colburn struck her gavel repeatedly. This is not a proper motion. This meeting was called to address concerns, not to hold impromptu votes. Actually, interjected Richard Thornton, surprising everyone, under Article 7 of our bylaws, homeowners may call for a vote of no confidence at any properly convened meeting if seconded and supported by at least 20% of present homeowners. The betrayal from her own board member left Ms. Colburn momentarily speechless. She recovered quickly, but her composure had visibly cracked. This is ridiculous. The board has acted in the best interest of the community at all times. These changes were implemented to improve safety, not compromise it. Then show us the documentation, I challenged. Show us the homeowner vote results. Show us the proper permit filings. Show us the emergency service notification confirmations. Her silence was damning. The vote proceeded despite her objections. The result was overwhelming. 85% expressed no confidence in Ms. Colburn's leadership. The second vote, regarding the restoration of original house numbers, passed with even greater support. By meeting's end, Ms. Colburn had been asked to step down pending a formal investigation into the board's actions. Richard Thornton was appointed interim president, and a committee including myself and 4 other homeowners was formed to oversee the restoration of the original numbering system. As people filed out of the community center, many stopped to share their own stories or simply offer support. The atmosphere had transformed from one of frustration to one of cautious optimism. The community had found its voice. Richard Thornton approached me as the crowd thinned. This should have been handled differently from the start, he admitted. For what it is worth, I am sorry about what happened to your sister. Just make this right, I told him. That is all any of us want. 6 weeks later, I stood in my driveway watching as a contractor carefully installed the original brass number plaque beside our front door. 4829 Willow Creek Lane had been officially restored, not just on our house, but in all municipal records. Emergency services had confirmed the update in their systems. The neighborhood was returning to normal, but it was a new normal, one where homeowners were more engaged, more vigilant. The restoration process had moved swiftly under the interim board's direction. Richard Thornton had proven himself to be a capable and transparent leader, communicating each step of the process to all residents through multiple channels: email, physical letters, and community bulletin boards. Ms. Colburn had resigned from the board entirely following the investigation, which revealed numerous procedural violations beyond the address changes. Her departure marked the end of an era of unchecked authority and the beginning of a more collaborative approach to community governance. As for Rachel, her recovery had been steady and complete. The doctors confirmed that the prompt treatment she ultimately received had prevented any lasting damage. She had returned to her teaching position, though she visited us more frequently now, our family bonds strengthened by the ordeal we had faced together. One unexpected outcome of our fight was my own increased involvement in community affairs. What began as a personal battle had evolved into an ongoing commitment to transparency and proper governance. I had been asked to speak at several local civic events about homeowner rights and the importance of community engagement. At each appearance, I shared our story as a cautionary tale about what can happen when administrative convenience is prioritized over safety and proper procedure. The most dangerous phrase in community management is "this is how we have always done it," I told an audience at the county civic center. Rules and procedures exist,